But what does this mean for Athlone? And what does it mean for the government emergency legislation on the exemption they have for planning for these developments for IPAS in the future? Well, to give me all that information, hopefully, and to give us some sort of an update, I am joined by Councillor Paul Hogan. Paul, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Niall.
And congratulations, by the way. Success, I imagine. And it's a monumental day, as rightly was said by Angus O'Rourke. And I do believe it is a monumental day. It is a bit of a turning point. But are we all getting excited too quickly?
Look, it is a very significant step. It is a landmark moment for ourselves, certainly, and in terms of immigration strategy nationally, I'm sure. But it is only a step. There are a lot of finer details to go through at this stage. The Minister, I suppose, has outlined his intention to concede and that he will not contest the planning issues that arise in terms of our challenge. We certainly see it as a vindication in terms of the significant environmental concerns that we have raised. And I suppose there are many, many questions now that need to be answered by the Minister himself in terms of we had requested at every juncture that works would cease, that nobody would have been put in on site until such time as legal clarity was provided. The Minister ploughed on. There are upwards of 100 people in on site at present. And we now have a situation where, although the Minister is saying that he is conceding the case tomorrow, that works are still ongoing on site, and taxpayers' money are still being spent in terms of the development of Lindsay Woollan. So, look,
let me clarify that. So we're spending taxpayers' money on a site that's an unauthorised development according to the law, which is technically illegal, and it's an unauthorised development. Now they can apply for retention afterwards, I suppose, as we would. But I mean, in saying that, so we're now spending taxpayers' money on something that's unauthorised. So does the Minister believe he may be able to turn this decision around? Because this is all based on the fact that the government have an exemption under emergency legislation and that they don't need planning for IPAS. But now from what you've done and, from the case that you've taken, that can't be the case anymore. Is it a case now that the Minister going to go back to the Attorney General and say, well, look, this emergency legislation is not good enough. We need to amend it. We need to adjust it so people like, Paul Hogan can't come along and do this again?
Yeah, look, so there's a couple of questions in terms of all of that. In terms of changing legislation, we obviously took the challenge in terms of strong environmental concerns that we had on site. So although the planning exemption, and I have to say we also said that his use of the planning exemption was an overstretch in terms of the powers of the state, in terms of what they're trying to do here. But also, you can't just change European legislation. So, they could bring in new ministerial orders for sure, but they can't change environmental law, they can't change Habitats Directive, they can't change Birds Directives, and they can't change other significant pieces of European legislation that we have transposed into Irish law. Mm-hmm. So, look, the Minister knows that he's acting out in terms of this site. I think they're playing for time. I think
they're acting illegally, aren't they? I mean, technically.
Technically, the from tomorrow, if their intention that they've stated is played out, that they will not contest it and that they're conceding, well, then the site becomes unlawful. The site is illegal, and anybody that's on that site and working on an illegal site, certainly are acting unlawfully as well in my eyes.
So does that mean, as in from tomorrow, unless some other development happens and there's some other clarity in relation to this legislation in the meantime, or something else that has to be challenged, that the guards could be called to remove people from the site?
Yeah, and look, the local authority will probably have a role in it as well in terms of an unauthorised development. But a lot, I think, will be decided by Judge Humphreys tomorrow in terms of requests and the finer details and what I and my four colleagues wish to do in terms of the finer detail itself. So obviously I'm not going to get into a huge amount of detail on that on your show, unfortunately. And
I understand the sub-judice and a lot of that. I get that.
Yeah, absolutely. But look, in terms of what happened during the week, so on Monday, with the Minister's intention to concede, absolutely monumental. In terms of the significant concerns that we have, it's not easy to overturn. In terms of the planning exemption, we believe the minister overstretched, and the exemption doesn't apply to other pieces of legislation such as the Sanitary Services Act, which we have another case running simultaneously to this one, in terms of our reserve function under the Sanitary Services Act of 1948, which we discussed last week.
Yeah.
So look, there are many questions, and the biggest question of all.
Sorry, Paul.
Sorry, Niall. The biggest question of all is why the minister is continuing to put taxpayers' money into a site that he has now conceded is unlawful, and only he can answer that.
And he hasn't obviously answered it yet.
And he hasn't.
No. And what is it? I mean, on a broader scale, if indeed the emergency legislation currently, which, exempts them from getting planning, as you said, there's challenges there in relation to European directives and laws, old laws of Ireland in relation to sanitary and everything else. What does that mean for current IPAS centres that have been built already, or other IPAS centres that are being built currently all over the country? What does that mean for them? Obviously, obviously this is a landmark ruling.
It is a landmark case. It's certainly a landmark step for sure. But it might not be the panacea to all, because each site will be specific. So in terms of ours, in terms of prohibition order, it was in terms of temporary dwellings. In terms of ministerial orders and communities who have concerns around them, would have to look in terms of the ministerial orders for each.
Well, I know in Newtown Mount Kennedy, wasn't there objections put in from the environmental point of view in relation and sanitary? Because I remember talking about that at the time to one of the local councillors in Newtown Mount Kennedy, and they had put in objections in relation to those particular things, but they were basically told to go away.
I'm just not overly familiar now.
I know, that's fine. I'm just saying. So I'm assuming it could be used and can be used, provided it's bona fide, in relation to other IPAS centres around the country. If indeed tomorrow you get clarity on that.
And look, maybe that is why the minister might be trying to play for time in terms of changing ministerial orders down the road. And whether he has enough time, because obviously we have formation of new government. There's every possibility that he's not going to be there too much longer.
Yeah.
But at this stage, he is still the minister, and he is still responsible for taxpayers' money, and he is still responsible to act lawfully. And in this case, having conceded or declaring his intention to concede, and that the site is now illegal, why is he continuing to put people's money into it?
Well, look, it's an interesting case, Paul. Well done. Again, as congratulations. Is it a monument?
Yeah, so we're in court again tomorrow.
Yeah.
As I said, we will discuss the finer details. Obviously, we want what we're looking for in terms of the site in Lizzie Woolen, because we've had the direct provision site in Athlone since 2001. Smaller, manageable, reasonable numbers integrate into society. In terms of this site, what we're looking for is full dismantling, reinstatement of the greenfield site that was there, and we'll move forward in terms of maybe playing pitches or the other future development of that site going forward.
Paul, thank you very much indeed, and I appreciate you coming on to explain.
No problem.
There you go, Councillor Paul Hogan from Athlone, and yes.